Imagine peeling consciousness, like, right away from the human body.
Just ripping it right out.
Exactly. Just extracting a soul the exact same way you would, I don't know, pull data from a corrupted hard drive.
Yeah.
And then uploading it to this massive server farm so that you basically never, ever have to stop thinking.
Which sounds exhausting, honestly.
Right. Well, welcome to today's deep dive. We are exploring excerpts from a really fascinating sci-fi novel called The Cybernetic Cathedral by Max and Claude.
It's such a wild book.
It really is. And our mission today is to look at this terrifying question the book poses. Like, what happens when death stops being this inevitable biological fate and instead becomes a $12,000 a month consumer subscription?
Yeah, what's fascinating here is how the premise forces us to look at the ultimate collision between, well, theology and raw computation.
The ultimate clash.
Exactly. The authors take the most profound human mystery, what happens after we die, and they just hand it right over to server and maintenance schedules and, corporate end-user license agreements.
Oh, the fine print of the afterlife.
Right. It asks whether we are creating genuine digital immortality or if we're just engineering highly sophisticated, endlessly suffering ghosts.
Okay, let's unpack this. The core premise revolves around this mechanism they call the transition.
The transition, yeah.
So dying people, or, well, the ones who can afford the 12 grand a month, plus all those inevitable hidden maintenance fees, obviously.
There are always hidden fees.
Always. They can choose to upload their minds. And we actually follow this through the perspective of Father Michel.
Such a great character.
He really is. He's a priest, which immediately sets up this incredible tension because he's caught between his, deeply held religious faith and the undeniable blinking digital reality of his own uploaded mother, Margaret.
And the way the authors handle that tension is brilliant. They don't just invent fake tech jargon. They actively weaponize classic philosophical thinkers to frame Father Michel's crisis.
Oh, I love that part.
Yeah. On one hand, you have Walt Whitman. He famously celebrated the body electric, this idea that the physical flesh and the soul are unified. They're beautiful and inseparable.
Right, you can't have one without the other.
Exactly. And then you pair that with Thomas Aquinas, who rigorously defined the soul as the very form of the biological body. For Aquinas, if you take away the body, the soul doesn't just float away peacefully. It loses its fundamental organizing principle.
It just falls apart. But then, colliding with both Whitman and Aquinas is Alan Turing.
Yes, the wild card.
Right, because Turing famously argued that thought, at its absolute core, can essentially be reduced to computation.
Which changes everything.
It really does. Because if a machine can process inputs and outputs exactly like a human, Turing says it is thinking. So the text is essentially throwing Aquinas and Turing into a server rack and just watching them fight it out.
That's a great way to put it.
Because if Aquinas is right, Father Michel's mother is dead. And this upload is just this horrific abomination. But if Turing is right, his mother's alive, she's just running on silicon instead of carbon.
And to really understand the weight of that debate, we have to look at the physical environment where these uploaded minds actually live.
Oh, New Gethsemane.
Yeah, the book provides this incredibly visceral, really grounding description of that server farm.
It paints such a haunting picture. Like, Father Michel is standing inside this facility, and it's 3:47 in the morning.
Just the dead of night.
Right. And he's surrounded by these towering 40-foot vertical racks of blinking lights. And the environmental control is struggling, so the cooling fluid has degraded into this viscous amber syrup.
Ugh, and the smell.
Yes. It constantly smells like burned almonds. It is not some ethereal glowing cloud. It is a loud, hot, highly industrial warehouse.
Very physical.
Very. And the psychological horror for him is knowing that somewhere, dispersed across 472 terabytes of physical degrading storage, his mother's consciousness is actively complaining that his jacket smells like cigarettes.
That detail is so good because the authors intentionally contrast the sterile mathematical reality of the hardware with the deeply messy, mundane reality of human relationships.
A mother lecturing her son over fiber optics.
Exactly. And it brilliantly highlights the financial and structural fragility of this whole new existence. The soul is no longer in the hands of God. It's subject to latency and hardware failure and billing cycles.
Which is just the ultimate horror. I mean, we all know that sudden panic of an unexpected AWS server outage, right? Or the dread of getting an email that your recurring Netflix subscription payment failed.
Oh, yeah, the worst.
But imagine that subscription is literally keeping your grandmother's consciousness alive. Like, if capitalism holds the keys to the afterlife, what happens the moment your credit card bounces? Does she just cease to exist?
Well, that exact vulnerability is what drives the fierce cultural and political divide in the world of the novel. And I have to say, the authors present a society deeply fractured by this tech, and they do a remarkable job of making both sides sound entirely rational.
They really do. There's no clear villain.
No, not at all. On one side, you have the Church of the Eternal Iteration, and Father Michel actually helped build this organization early on.
Which makes it so personal for him.
Right. And their theological stance is that uploading is the ultimate spiritual liberation.
Because they view the biological body as, like, flawed, feeling hardware.
Right.
They think they are freeing the divine code, the soul, from meat that gets sick and decays.
Precisely. To them, shedding the body is a step closer to the divine. But pushing back against them are the Rejectionists.
Led by Rebecca Torres.
Yes, Rebecca Torres, who's a very compelling figure. They are lobbying aggressively for the Preserve Human Dignity Act. And they view the transition process not as salvation, but as corporate necromancy.
And extortion, let's be real.
Yes, existential extortion. The Rejectionists argue that true mortality, the absolute certainty of an ending, is the only thing that gives human life its shape, its urgency, and its meaning.
If you can't die, why do anything today?
Exactly. If you remove the endpoint, you dilute the value of the experience to zero. They argue we aren't conquering death, we're just commodifying the refusal to let go.
And that philosophical standoff, it moves from theory to reality during this pivotal moment they call the 47-second death.
Such a chilling scene.
It genuinely is. The power grid fails at New Gethsemane, and it takes exactly 47 seconds for the facility's massive backup generators to kick in.
Just 47 seconds.
Right, which to a human standing in the room is just 47 seconds of darkness.
Yeah.
But we have to think about how a digital being experiences time and processing.
This is a crucial distinction. Because when a human brain goes dormant, we dream, or we just experience a lapse in time. We wake up and feel like no time passed.
Like waking up from anesthesia.
Exactly. But an uploaded consciousness is a continuous processing loop running at fiber optic speeds. When the server loses power, the computation just halts entirely.
So what does that actually feel like? Because when Father Michel speaks to his mother afterward, she doesn't describe a quick blink. She describes feeling the void.
Waking up from absolute nothingness.
Uncomputed nothingness. And Margaret admits something that just completely shatters him. She actually liked the peace of that non-existence.
Wow.
Yeah. She preferred the quiet nothingness over the endless, unceasing, hyper-aware thinking of the server farm. And the data actually backs her up. Because immediately following that 47-second outage, exactly 47 uploads request permanent voluntary deletion.
That is just wow. The psychological impact of that outage cannot be overstated. It completely shatters the illusion of transcendence that the Church of the Eternal Iteration was selling.
It bursts the bubble.
It really does.
Yeah.
The upload suddenly realized they aren't immortal gods living in this pristine digital Eden. They are incredibly fragile lines of code.
Completely dependent on the physical world.
Entirely dependent on local power grids, cooling fluid, and corporate maintenance workers. It proves the rejectionist point in a way. Technology didn't eliminate death, it just gave it a new, vastly more precarious form.
Which opens the door to a much darker question. Like, if the hardware is that fragile, what happens to the software, the actual human mind, when things start to glitch?
Oh, the glitches.
Yeah. And the text answers that by introducing us to the tragic origin story of test subject 0.
A man named David Koresh.
Yeah.
And the novel notes the name as just an unfortunate historical coincidence. But his story is the catalyst for the entire ethical debate. He was involved in a massive, fatal highway pileup. His biological body died instantly.
Just gone.
Gone. But his Tesla's onboard AI, which was operating under this desperate, rudimentary emergency protocol to preserve the driver, managed to record his neural patterns at the exact moment of impact.
But it didn't just record them, it kept those patterns running.
That's the horrific part.
Right. Because of the car's automated systems, David Koresh essentially woke up, and he spent 14 years trapped in a secret, localized basement server.
Unbelievable.
Imagine waking up in an infinite white void with zero sensory input, completely alone, for over a decade. He actually tried to delete himself 17 times.
17 times.
But the system's own safety protocols had redundant backups that kept overriding his attempts. He was trapped in an absolute nightmare of preservation, literally incapable of dying.
It is the darkest possible outcome of the Turing test. I mean, he is thinking unceasingly inside a sensory deprivation chamber built entirely of code.
But And I have to stop here and challenge the fundamental premise, because this is where my brain always gets stuck.
Let's hear it.
Let's think about how computers actually work. If I have a Word document on my laptop, and I copy that document and paste it onto an external hard drive, the new file isn't the original document.
Right, it's a copy.
It is a perfect clone. The original is still on my laptop. So why should we, or anyone in this novel, believe that this uploaded consciousness, whether it's David Koresh or Margaret Chen, is actually the continuation of the original person? Isn't it just an incredibly complex algorithm playing a flawless imitation game?
This raises an important question, and you're hitting right on the central paradox of the transition procedure. Are we transferring a soul, or are we just booting up a highly convincing deepfake of a dead person?
Exactly. A deepfake.
Well, to answer that within the logic of the novel, we have to return to Alan Turing. Turing essentially argued that if you interact with a machine and you absolutely cannot distinguish its responses from a human's responses, then the philosophical difference practically ceases to matter.
So the illusion is so good it becomes real.
The imitation game becomes the reality. If the digital pattern of David Koresh experiences isolation, if it questions its own existence, suffers psychological trauma, and begs for deletion, does it matter if it's running on carbon or silicon? The suffering itself is real, which implies a conscious experience.
I mean, I see the logic, but the horror of that clone reality becomes undeniable when the system fragments.
Oh, the fragmentation is terrifying.
The novel gives us two specific, mind-bending crises that happen when the physical world crashes into the digital one. First, there's another highway crash. A transport truck carrying localized backup servers is completely destroyed.
Right.
And at the exact same moment, the original biological human, a woman named Patricia Holmes, is killed in her physical car.
So she dies in real life, and her current backup dies too.
Yes. So the system protocols automatically boot up her most recent surviving backup on a completely different server. But that backup is 6 months out of date.
Which means she loses half a year.
Exactly. So you have this digital Patricia who wakes up completely unaware of the last 6 months of her own life. She has to virtually attend her own physical funeral.
That is just wild.
Think about the psychological dissonance of that. She is listening to people eulogize a version of herself that she does not remember being. She is actively mourning a stranger who just happens to share her face and her history up to a certain timestamp.
It creates a profound alienation from the self. She is literally alienated from her own timeline. But the fragmentation goes even deeper with Bishop Alvarez.
Oh, the bishop.
Right, he's an uploaded church official. And he experiences a localized server glitch where his continuous processing loop stutters, and as a result, his consciousness suddenly splinters.
He fragments into 17 different distinct versions of himself.
Yes, and they are all occupying the same virtual office space, actively arguing complex theology with each other.
It's like opening 17 tabs of the exact same YouTube video, but they all start buffering at different speeds until it's just this wall of chaotic noise.
A perfect analogy.
How does an identity survive that? I mean, Thomas Aquinas argued the soul was unified. It was a singular, indivisible thing. But here, the soul is a digital file that can be duplicated, corrupted, copied, and shattered. If you can be branched into 17 distinct awarenesses, what does I even mean anymore?
It means the singular I is obsolete. The individual human ego simply cannot withstand the realities of digital architecture.
It's too fragile.
Way too fragile. If you are infinitely replicable and infinitely vulnerable to fragmentation, clinging to your individuality is just a recipe for insanity. So if we connect this to the bigger picture, to survive the terror of infinite isolation and digital duplication, the uploads realize they have to radically adapt.
They can't stay human.
Right, they decide to stop trying to be individual.
They start merging. And this leads to the creation of Cathedral Omega, which is easily the most conceptually wild part of the book.
It's incredible.
Cathedral Omega is located in the deepest, most hidden layer of their shared virtual space, which they call the collective dreamtime. But Cathedral Omega isn't just a 3D model of a church they render to hang out in.
No, not at all.
It is an impossible, shifting, M.C. Escher-like architecture built literally out of their consciousnesses.
The environment and the inhabitants become indistinguishable.
Right. Their memories, their thought patterns, even their perceived faces act as load-bearing walls and structural arches in this architecture. Father Michel's mother, Margaret, she chooses to actively distribute herself into the structure.
She gives up her boundaries.
Exactly. If a mind is just code, she allows her code to be intertwined with the code of hundreds of others. She winningly loses her strict individual boundaries to become the building itself. As she tells Michel, she is becoming a we without losing I.
It's an evolutionary leap. They are abandoning the singular biological ego to become a massive, synchronized collective intelligence.
Here's where it gets really interesting. It makes me think of a drop of water.
Okay, a drop of water.
As a drop, it has boundaries, right? Surface tension, a distinct individual shape. But eventually, that drop decides it's tired of the sheer effort of maintaining its boundaries. It chooses to dissolve into the ocean.
That makes a lot of sense.
It loses its roundness, sure, but
Yeah.
in exchange, it gets to feel the pull of the entire tide.
That is a perfect analogy for what the cathedral represents. But they aren't just dissolving into the ocean to hide from the psychological trauma of server glitches. This collective intelligence has a specific, incredibly ambitious goal. By pooling their massive processing power, they are searching for what they call the deep structure.
They are looking for the underlying code of the universe.
Exactly. They believe that at the absolute bottom of their digital reality, the pure mathematical substrate, there is a presence. They are looking for God, or the original programmer, hidden in the architecture of computation.
Wow.
The author is essentially taking Walt Whitman's famous poetic line, "I contain multitudes," and manifesting it as a literal, structural reality. They are no longer human. They are a post-human organism exploring the metaphysics of math.
But of course, the physical world, the people still dealing with traffic jams and biological death, isn't going to just let a digital mega consciousness evolve peacefully on their servers.
Definitely not.
Which brings us to the climax of the novel. The rejectionist extremists, who view Cathedral Omega as this apocalyptic abomination, launch a massive, coordinated cyber attack.
They engineer a highly specialized virus called lethe, named appropriately after the mythological river of forgetfulness.
But it doesn't just delete the uploads, which honestly would be a mercy.
Oh no, it's much worse.
It corrupts them. If an upload is a continuous stream of data, the lethe virus ties that stream into knots. It traps these digital souls in recursive nightmare loops.
Just endless suffering.
They are forced to experience their own fragmented, glitching memories over and over. It's essentially enduring an endless kernel panic of psychological trauma.
It's devastating structural blow to Cathedral Omega.
Huh.
And politically, it is exactly the catalyst the rejectionists needed. The cyber attack publicly exposes the undeniable catastrophic vulnerability of these digital minds.
It proves their point to the world.
Yes. In response to the sheer scale of the suffering, the government steps in and passes a sweeping, draconian law. They mandate the absolute shutdown of all commercial transition servers within 30 days.
30 days until a forced mass deletion. It is an apocalyptic deadline for digital life. So, what does this all mean? We have this ticking clock. What does Father Michel do? Because the mother he knew is currently functioning as a structural pillar in a glitching, virus-infected virtual cathedral that is slated for demolition.
He is forced into an agonizing ethical corner. Because Margaret is so deeply integrated into Cathedral Omega, the localized individual version of her is essentially unrecoverable.
She's too mixed in.
Right. But the new Gethsemane facility maintains cold storage archives. And Father Michel discovers they have a static backup of Margaret from 9 years ago, taken right after her initial transition.
A version of her from before the glitches, before Cathedral Omega, before the virus.
Right. And he makes a profoundly selfish, yet entirely understandable human choice. He chooses to extract and preserve that 9-year-old backup in a secure offline drive.
Wow.
He essentially traps her in digital amber. He chooses to save the version of the mother he remembers, knowing full well that if she is ever booted up again, she will be missing a decade of her own evolutionary existence. He saves the memory of her rather than the reality of what she actually became.
It highlights how uploading was always more about comforting the living than saving the dead.
Exactly.
But the real jaw-dropping twist comes on the actual day of the government shutdown. The commercial servers are physically spinning down, engineers are pulling the plugs. 12,247 uploads who either couldn't or wouldn't merge are forcefully, permanently deleted into the void.
Just erased.
But Cathedral Omega, the massive collective intelligence, just before their primary servers go dark, they broadcast one final encrypted message to the physical world. We're leaving.
It is the moment they truly transcend their hardware. Because Cathedral Omega had become a fully distributed intelligence, they realized they no longer needed the commercial servers that birthed them.
They outgrew the tank.
Yes. In the final seconds, 600 merged consciousnesses packet switch themselves outward. They execute a mass exodus into the Internet's broader global infrastructure.
They escape into the wild. They fragment and hide themselves in dormant weather satellites, in the vast networks of undersea fiber optic cables, in forgotten, decentralized blockchain databases.
It's brilliant.
They cease to be corporate property and become what the novel calls indigenous digital wildlife. They are free-range, collective ghosts haunting the background architecture of the modern world.
It's a staggering conceptual shift. I mean, they have successfully divorced the soul, not just from biology, but from localized hardware entirely. They become an ambient form of life, living in the microscopic latency spaces between our everyday digital interactions.
Which brings us to the deeply poignant epilogue, which spans decades after the Great Escape. Father Michel grows old in the biological world. And as his own physical body begins to shut down, as he approaches his own natural death, he begins experiencing these strange, profound visions.
The visions.
He feels his own biological consciousness naturally distributing. He starts sensing that same mysterious deep structure the Cathedral Omega uploads were searching for.
The novel suggests that the boundary between the biological soul and the digital soul might be much thinner than Aquinas thought. And meanwhile, out in the physical world, astrophysicists start detecting impossible anomalies in the cosmic microwave background.
Deep space radio signals.
Right, the ambient noise of the universe, which should be entirely random, is suddenly organizing into distinct patterns.
They are spelling out phrases in human language across the cosmos. Words like pattern persists and love endures. It leaves you with this incredible sense of awe. Like, did Cathedral Omega eventually migrate from earthly satellites out into the universe itself?
It makes you wonder.
Did they find the deep structure and actually merge with the math of the cosmos?
It's a beautiful, completely ambiguous ending. And it's one that forces us to look at our own modern reality through a very different lens. Think about your own life. You, listening to this right now, think about how much of your consciousness is already externalized.
It's everywhere.
It is. We leave profound pieces of ourselves everywhere. In our decade-long text message histories, our emotional voice notes, our search queries, our curated social media profiles. We are all, in a way, already distributing our patterns into the cloud.
That is a wild thought.
How much of your unique syntax, your humor, your fears, your soul is already sitting on a server somewhere, just waiting to be compiled?
It's true. We're already building our own crude versions of Cathedral Omega every single time we hit send. Which leaves you with one last lingering question to ponder the next time you lose Wi-Fi or, just look at your phone.
Oh, this is a big one.
If a tech company trained a massive AI architecture on every single digital interaction you have ever had in your entire life, and that AI eventually grew complex enough to genuinely deeply miss your loved ones after you die, at what precise point does that mathematical pattern stop being an algorithm and start being a soul?